On this episode, Suzume finally opens in North America. We'll take a look at the box office opening weekend. The first Slam Dunk and Lonely Castle in the Mirror are confirmed to get US releases. Taylor Gonzales joins me for an open spoiler discussion on Suzume and much, much more. Behold, it's me, the CEO of SAO, the resident PGS Transformers expert as proclaimed by Robert Meyer Burnett, or as most people know me, Kingtanic. Hello and welcome to all my fellow weebs, otakus, imagination connoisseurs, and all of the members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity, to another episode of the Otaku Experience, the non-anime news show where we discuss the current goings-on of the anime and manga industry with our very uneducated opinions. Special thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett, all the great folks at the Burnett Network, and of course you, our viewers, because if it weren't for you guys, this show would not be possible. Alright, before we get into Suzume's box office opening weekend, let's take a look at some of the anime films that are going to come to the box office later this year, starting with the first Slam Dunk. So, according to Cinemark, the first Slam Dunk, an adaptation of the Slam Dunk manga, will receive a US release in theaters this year. This is the film that we've been talking about throughout most of the year that's been in Japan, breaking a ton of records, which we'll get into in a second, but here's a quick synopsis of the film. Hanamichi Sakuragi is a delinquent with a long history of getting dumped by girls. After enrolling in Shohoku High School, Hanamichi becomes interested in a girl named Hirako, who loves the game of basketball. So this is a little CG animated basketball sports film. And I gotta say, as someone who's not really into sports like soccer or like basketball, anime about those topics has been able to interest me a lot more. In real life, I'm more interested in things like football. But then you go to anime and things like baseball, things like hockey, things like soccer, things like basketball, sports that would not interest me in real life. They seem to make it really epic and entertaining in anime. So I'm excited to see this film, as well as the fact that I don't think the CGI looks that bad. I've seen some complaints for the CGI. I don't think it looks too bad. I don't think it looks as great as things like Trigun Stampede, which we just got in the winter 2023 anime season. I don't think it looks as great as things like Bell or like Beastars. But I do think it's on par in a different way of like the Duke of Death and His Mistress. Is that the name of that anime that aired last year or the year before? But one thing's for sure, it definitely looks leagues better than X-Arm, so that's a good thing. So the records that we were talking about a little bit earlier and that we've been talking about throughout the entire year of the Otaku Experience has been that this film is now the 25th highest grossing film in Japan of all time, as well as the 11th highest anime film, with a box office of roughly 98 million just in Japan and 138 million worldwide. So this film has definitely already made back its entire budget and then some. It's been an incredible success for anime films as anime films go. And we do not have a specific release date for this film, but this film will be released in US theaters later this year. And I'm very excited to see it. From everything I've seen, from everything I've heard about the synopsis, just from all the records it's breaking. Like, you can't break records if you're not great and you're not getting people to come back and see your film more and more and getting new people. Like, there has to be huge word of mouth for people to recommend you to go see the movie, and then they have to be wanting to see it again themselves in order for films to break records. And so I'm personally really excited. All that bodes well for me, as well as the decently high review on my anime list. This seems to be like a film that could be pretty exciting and pretty special. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the first Slam Dunk in theaters later this year. Along with that, we had Lonely Castle in the Mirror, which is also getting a US release later this summer. So G-Kids, one of the major American distributors for anime, announced last Thursday that they have acquired the rights to Lonely Castle in the Mirror, with plans to release the film in the US this summer. They have also released the official synopsis for the American release, which is: shy outcast Kokoro has been avoiding school for weeks when she discovers a portal in her bedroom mirror. She reaches through and finds herself transported to an enchanting castle where she is joined by 6 other students. When a girl in a wolf mask explains that they have been invited to play a game, the teens must work together to uncover the mysterious connection that unites them. However, anyone who breaks the rules will be eaten by a wolf. And so, according to Crunchyroll, this film has been It premiered internationally at the Rotterdam International Film Festival before it's holding its U.S. premiere at the New York International Children's Film Festival. It originally opened in Japan in December 2022, and it was nominated for a Japan Academy Prize Animation of the Year award. Once again, like with the first Slam Dunk, these are two very different types of movies, but like with the first Slam Dunk, I'm very intrigued to check this out. The reviews have also been pretty solid. It comes from a director who has not directed, and not every film that he's made has been great, but he has made great things, and so he's a very experienced and very capable director. The book seems to be pretty well regarded. The writer that he's paired with for this seems to be pretty well established as well. So everything in here seems to be going pretty well. And just from that synopsis, I'm interested. I think the artwork looks amazing. Like we just said, it was nominated for an animation award. And so I think that this looks really fun as well. I've tried to stay away from the trailers. Once again, we talked about this ad nauseum on the Otaku Experience, but anime trailers don't really do too much for me unless I'm already sold on them. And I'm decently sold on both of these already, but I usually try to stay away from anime trailers as a whole because usually they're so poorly edited that they end up killing my excitement rather than anything. So I've just looked at the animation. I think they both look absolutely beautiful in completely different ways. One is 3D animation, sports, they're athletic, they're moving around. And then one is more this fantasy, typical 2D animation that we're used to seeing in anime. And I think both films look great, and I'm very excited to see both. We do know that this one, The Lonely Castle in the Mirror, is coming out in summer. We don't have a official season release or anything like that for the first Slam Dunk, but we do know that both are going to be coming out later this year. And I personally would not be surprised if the first Slam Dunk also comes out sometime this summer. Beginning into the anime that are currently in theaters, we have Mario, which isn't really anime, but Nintendo is a Japanese company, so I consider this to be anime adjacent. So I figured we might as well talk about it. So Mario has been an absolute juggernaut in the theaters. I've seen it twice. I love it both times. Princess Peach, marry me. I'm just like Bowser. Man, oh man. And then Peaches, the song that Bowser sings in that movie, is fantastic. And it's been like my life thing. I need to get a banner just against that entire back wall back there of Princess Peach, just laying down or so. Whoa, Israel. Oh, anyways, well, this is a kid's movie. Israel, stop it. Okay, so as of recording this episode, the Super Mario Bros. Movie has earned nearly $360 million at the domestic box office just in America, with a worldwide haul of $710 million. So the major questions that everybody is asking about this film is, will Mario make $1 billion? The answer is yes, but also how much money over $1 billion will this make? I'm personally in the camp, maybe this is just me being hopeful because I didn't really like Frozen 2, but I'm hoping that it tops Frozen 2, which I believe is at $1.4 billion. So I'm hoping that it has 2 more weeks in the theaters and it's already just about halfway there without it still releasing in Japan and in other major markets that can still give it a huge boost, particularly in Japan. With Japan, Nintendo comes from Japan. This is going to be a juggernaut of a film in Japan. And so I think that this film can easily make 1.3. 1.4 is where we're going to have to test it a little bit. Maybe they'll have to remarket it. Maybe we have to look out for Guardians of the Galaxy, which comes out in 2 weeks in America, which will probably kill the domestic box office for this. And when I say kill, I don't mean it won't make any more money, but it'll stop making as much money. Like the first weekend it made 150. This next weekend it made 90. It's been having very strong weekends. I think in 2 weeks, once Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, we're going to see that box office dip a little bit, but hopefully the international markets can pick that up. And I'm hoping that this can make 1.5 billion. It doesn't need to. It's already a huge juggernaut success. And I would just like it too, because I don't really like Frozen 2 all that much. And then the second question, along with the box office, is how does this bode for video game movies going forward? And we're not really a video game show. This would be a better question to ask on Architects of Imagination. But as someone on the outside, always looking in, sorry, Dear Evan Hansen reference. Sorry about that. But as someone looking in from the outside, I do really like a good video game adaptation, even when it's games that I'm not familiar with. So Last of Us, which just aired on HBO, fantastic show. Not perfect, but fantastic. I love those games. Those are some of the few games that I've actually played. Then there were the Sonic movies, which I think that those are great too. I've played a couple of the Sonic games and I've seen some of the Sonic anime. Mario, everybody's played Mario. I love Mario Kart. I love Super Mario Maker, Smash Bros. And then, just the original Super Mario games. Then we have things like Arcane League of Legends, which I think is the best, bar none, best video game adaptation. I have not played the game of that, but I hear that it's very different from the game that it's based on, League of Legends, but it's still, I think, just from a story perspective, amazing. And there was also news recently that we're probably not going to get Arcane Season 2 this year, which I'm very, very upset about. But anyways, and then there's like Uncharted and things like that. And then we have the Resident Evil stuff. They're currently working on like God of War and other things like that. So how does this bode for particularly video game movies moving forward? I think that this shows that this can be as big of a genre as comic book movies. You know, everybody has been talking about it for the past 2 decades, like, oh my gosh, comic book movies, that's the thing. And everybody kind of got sick of it for a bit. And then, you know, us in the anime field, we're waiting for our turns. But we have to acknowledge that we had movies first, then we had video games, and now it's video games' turn. Anime's time will come. You know, we're now in that section where video game movies for a long time were making under $500 million. And that's kind of where the anime industry is. Just wait, anime fans. We will get those great live action adaptations. I know, just a couple of years ago, we would probably be feeling the same way with like live action video game adaptations. And to an extent, we still are. You know, we get things like Halo or like those Resident Evil movies and things like that, or like the original Super Mario Brothers movie, God forbid. And, you know, we think about that and we're like, oh my gosh, we don't want live action adaptations. But then we start getting good stuff like The Last of Us. And then it's suddenly like, okay, maybe if they do it right, being live action isn't an inherently bad thing. And hopefully we can have that mindset come in with anime fans. And I know we've been scarred. We've had Death Note. We've had Cowboy Bebop. We've had, Dragon Ball Z and Attack on Titan. We've had Ghost in the Shell, right? And you know, it has not been all that great. But I think the thing is, we're still in the beginning. We're still in the birth pains. We're still at the very beginning of the process. We just need to wait a second. It's video games' turn, and I think that this bodes very well for video games going forward, that this can be a huge market as long as they do the stuff right. And, you know, as far as I've seen, you know, we have Last of Us with Neil Druckmann, very involved, who created those games. Mario with Nintendo, very involved. To me, it seems that if we keep the creators involved, and then we basically just follow what they say, but then have screenwriters come in and write what the creator is asking them to do, it seems to me that we have a winning formula. And so maybe that's the case with anime, where we need to have, if we're going to do a live action Hollywood adaptation of Attack on Titan or something like that, which I do not think we're ready for at all, but let's just say hypothetically, well, then we would have Hajime Isayama come in and be a consultant, if not a writer on it. And then basically he would be planning out the story, and then the writers would just be writing down what he tells them to write down, right? And then just they're putting their writer's spin on it, and things like that. I think that we would see a lot more of that with anime adaptations going forward, rather than, you know, a Hollywood studio like Netflix and Death Note just buying the rights from the studio that licensed Death Note, and then not having anyone from Death Note involved really substantially, and then making their own thing that is very loosely Death Note, just when you look at the Shinigami's appearances. But other than that, it doesn't look anything like Death Note. It's completely unrecognizable other than that. And so hopefully we start seeing that be the case. So I think that this bodes well for video game adaptations as well as anime adaptations going forward. But another film that is in the box office right now, as you guys know, one of my most anticipated, if not my most anticipated movie of the year, is a movie that actually released last year, which that has been Makoto Shinkai's newest film, Suzume. Now, obviously, you guys have heard me talk about this. I freaking love Makoto Shinkai. Weathering with You, I think, is one of the most perfect movies. Actually, no, not one of. It is the most perfect movie I've ever seen. Titanic's still my favorite movie of all time, but I think Weathering with You is literally flawless. Like, there's nothing in it I would change. And I know that's maybe a hot take. A lot of people don't like the ending. Whatever. That's fine. Your Name is also fantastic. The funny thing about Your Name is I always forget how good that movie is. Like, I intellectually know that Your Name is great, and then I won't watch it for like a year or two, and then I'll be like, you know, I should go back and rewatch Your Name. And so I rewatch Your Name, and then I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm like in tears. It's great. But usually I always forget how great Your Name is, or I forget that feeling. And obviously he did things like 5 centimeters per second, The Garden of Words. He's a great established anime thing. And a lot of people have called him the next Miyazaki, which he kind of, what would it be? what's the word? It rejects. I was thinking regrets, but he rejects the title. There's a J, not a G. He rejects that title. Shinkai rejects that title, and I get what he's saying with that. I think he's like, I kind of want to be my own filmmaker. I don't want to be the next Miyazaki. There's only one Miyazaki. I want to be Makoto Shinkai, and I get that. But I think what people say when they what I think people mean when they say that is that he's the next big influential GOAT of anime filmmakers at the time. And I think that's absolutely true. I would go a step further. I think Shinkai might be the most talented storyteller working in any visual medium in the world right now. That's just my opinion. Once again, I have not seen everything ever. I haven't played every video game that's released in the past decade. I have not seen every single movie that's released in the past decade. I have not seen every single anime that's released in the past decade, or every TV show that's released in the past decade. And then you're like, Israel, why should you be talking? Well, just from the things I've seen, everything that Shinkai has made has been like a 9 out of 10 or above, bro. Like, he is this insanely talented filmmaker that I think instantly puts him up there. I mean, when it comes to animated filmmakers, he's instantly in like the top 10 greats, along with Miyazaki and people from, Pixar and DreamWorks and things like that. But I would say even in general filmmakers, I would have him up there. At least like of all time, at least in like the top 25, maybe top 50. All right. He's got to be up there. He's very talented. That being said, Suzume finally opened this past weekend to a domestic haul of $5 million. Now, at first glance, especially when you compare it to like Mario, or when you think about films like Demon Slayer or like Jujutsu Kaisen, which have opened around the $20 million range, this can seem to be a little bit disappointing. And I felt that way too. When it was coming out, I talked to Rob on the member chat. I was talking about it on social media. I was very disappointed when I heard the box office headlines for Suzume. I was disappointed when I opened my AMC to get tickets, and there was like 20 people in the theater. And I saw it twice opening weekend, and both times it was like 20 people in the theater. And it was just very sad to see. And then I did some research for the show, and I was like, just out of curiosity, like I know what the worldwide hauls of Your Name and Weathering With You are, but what would it look like if we compared them directly to Suzume in like every aspect? And so here's what I found. So Your Name opened to $1.8 million in the US across 311 theaters. That was the most it ever opened up to in the US. And it went on to make $5 million total. Then we had the next film, which was Weathering With You, which also opened to $1.8 million in the US with a wide release of 1,020 theaters. So over 3 times what Your Name had. But it went on to make $7.7 million total, $3 million more than Your Name. And then it made $300 in its 2021 re-release, which I was there for, and it was great. And then Suzume, the most recent Shinkai film, has opened to $5 million in 2,170 theaters. And so, as we're saying, is that as Shinkai's films become more and more mainstream, they're releasing wider and wider theaters, and they're making more and more money on the surface. Now, here's what I found. So Suzume's per theater average is half of what Your Name per theater average was when it released, and then $600 less than what Weathering With You's per theater average has been. Suzume's per average earning in theaters has been under $1,000, whereas Your Name hit $2,000, and Weathering With You was in the 1.5, 1.6 camp for its opening weekend. Suzume opened below that. Now, I still think that Suzume, considering that it's already way past the halfway mark there, will be the highest grossing domestic film of Shinkai's career. But I think that what this shows is that if Suzume came in at the exact same amount of theaters as Weathering With You, it would have made less than Weathering With You. If it came in at the exact same amount of theaters as Your Name, it would have made less than Your Name. And so I think that there was a disconnect with the audience, probably with the marketing, that caused people not to go see this movie when they should have, even though they had so many opportunities to go see it. And there's still opportunities for you to see it. You can still see it today. You can still see it this next weekend. And I think that'll probably be it for its run. It'll probably then start peeling out of theaters. The week after this week will probably be in half the amount of theaters. And then after that, the half of that, and then keep going until it's eventually out of the US. But I do think that Suzume is still a bona fide success. But it's a mixed bag, You can look at this so many different ways. You can say, hey, if we look at, other anime films that have been releasing lately, it seems to be, a pretty decent downstep. I mean, it made so much more than Sword Art Online did. Don't even get me started on that. But it, compared to things like Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen, this is Shinkai. This is Your Name. This is Weathering with You. We would have thought that this would have opened up to more. But then you look at it from a different angle and you're like, okay, well, on its opening, it made more than double what Your Name and Weathering with You did. It made more than what Weathering with You and Your Name did combined in their opening weekends. But then you look at the per theater average and you're like, okay, it made less per theater, but it was in more theaters, so that kind of made up for the fact. And so now it's kind of like, how is this going to bode for Shinkai's next film when that inevitably comes to US theaters? It's going to be very interesting to see. I still blame this on the marketing because this film, the audience reaction, the critic reaction, everything has been amazing. It's still my favorite film of the year so far. And I think that I just think that there was a disconnect, and a lot of people just frankly did not know that this film was coming out. Every time I bring it up in the member chats or when I bring it up on the John Campy show or whatever, there's always people in the live chat saying, "I didn't even know that this movie came out. I've never even heard of that." Da 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 da. And it's like, wow. There was such a disconnect. They should have marketed this film. They shouldn't have waited until 2 weeks before the English release and then released a crappy English dub trailer. They should have waited, or they should have released trailers sooner, had an actual marketing campaign. It doesn't have to be, the budget of like Avengers Endgame or whatever, but a marketing campaign. Let people know that this film exists and that it's going to be in theaters. I, of course, was looking for it because it's Makoto Shinkai and I love anime and I love his films. So I was looking for it. But for people who don't and people who just go to the movies, maybe aren't completely within that fold and don't know that it's coming out because they don't follow a bunch of news sources like I do, or they don't cover this stuff, they didn't know that it was coming out. And so I hope that what this means is that maybe there'll be a decent hold this next weekend, because I don't think anything major is going into the theaters this next weekend other than Bo is Afraid. And so hopefully this means that there'll be a decent hold, but I don't know. I'm still kind of disappointed with the way Suzume has been going. But speaking of Suzume, up next is a spoiler discussion of the film with Taylor Gonzales and myself. When we return, we will be discussing manga news like the return of Berserk and a new manga from the creator of Kaguya, Oshinoko, and more. All right, welcome to the special part of this episode of the Otaku Experience. I am here with 50 Shades of Tay, Taylor Gonzales. If you don't know who 50 Shades of Tay is, well, one, that's a you problem. But Taylor Gonzales, who for a while there was on the John Campy show. You guys have decided to, I guess, go your separate ways so that way you guys can pursue different areas. So very excited to see both of those journeys going forward. You've obviously been, Rob, you're good friends with Rob. We've chatted before on Midnight Musings. Obviously your channel is great. You're getting these interviews. You're going to see so many movies. We were talking a little bit before we started filming and you were saying that you saw 5 movies in 5 days. I guess, for people who don't know, anything about you, I guess, what would be like the little Taylor Gonzales introduction?
Ooh, okay, that's good. It should come with like a warning label because I feel like a little bit parental advisory, but also just huge movie fan of all genres. My favorite genre of film is horror, as many of you know, and also I would say my blind spot is anime. It's not that I don't like anime, it's not that I don't want to get into it, it's just I feel like I don't know where to start, and I also don't know which films I can just jump into without having to watch a show or read a novel or read a comic book. So very excited.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you here. I think on behalf of me, and I mean, I've seen some people, because we announced that you were going to be on the show on the members only chat, which was earlier today when we were filming this. And all the live chat was like, "Oh my gosh, Taylor! Yay! I'm so excited! I'll be there." And so I think we got a lot more people to go see Suzume simply because you're going to be here talking about it. So that's fun. I think this is going to be really great. Okay, so Suzume, the reason why we're here. Sadly, it's not performing all that great in America. It only made $5 million this opening weekend. It should have, considering it's from the same director of Your Name, Weathering with You, this should have easily done like over $10 million. So the fact that it underperformed, it just goes to show that they did not market this thing well in America. I think they only did one trailer and like they didn't really do anything else for the American release. So, which is really sad because I think that this is such a great
movie, and it's so different from all the other films that are in theaters right now with Air, with John Wick, Mario. It's such a completely different type of movie in almost every way that you're never going to get this type of movie experience from an American movie just because there's such a cultural and storytelling difference between those. What was your experience? You know, you were talking about how you haven't really watched anime all that much. That's one of your blind spots. What was it like seeing this movie? You know, you see a lot of movies. So what was it like comparing this movie to your other movie going experiences?
Ooh, okay. So, backing up a little bit to the marketing, I had not seen a single trailer for this. I didn't even know about it until you messaged me about doing this collaboration together. And then I did not look up anything. I just instantly got my ticket and I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I went into it without seeing a trailer. They did have a cardboard cutout in the walkway when I was walking up to my room for the screening. So that was the only knowledge I had going into it. But I saw it in Dolby. No, not in Dolby. I saw it in Prime at the AMC Burbank 16. And my options for showtimes, there was the English dub, and then there was the Japanese voice with the English subtitles. But the English subtitle ones weren't till like now. I think there was like a 5 o'clock showing and then later. So I saw it in the English dub, which I don't really have a preference. I don't know if you have a preference, but I could go either way with that. I could either see it the way it was filmed, or I could see it with the dub. Either one is good for me. But going into this movie, I had no idea what to expect. I loved it. I walked out of it and I was like, oh, I am so glad I was able to fit it in this weekend. Because like you said, 5 movies in 5 days. So I'm just really thankful that you recommended this to me, and everything about it. It's like a near perfect movie, honestly. And I cannot wait to check out other things from this director. And it's just everything about it. It was just like so beautiful to look at, just visually, just gorgeous. The color, the use of color, and then even like the effects, like when there was the raindrops. And I know I said this in my review of it, but all the food in the movie looked so good. Like when they were eating the rice and they were eating the ramen, everything just looked delicious.
I mean, that's like a staple of anime. Like if you go look at like the Ghibli films, like there's this famous scene in Howl's Moving Castle where Howl, the male lead of that film, he like cooks some eggs and bacon over a fire. And like every now and then, like a few times a year, that someone will just post a GIF of that and it'll get like 100,000 likes on Twitter. And everybody's like, it looks so good. And that's the thing. I mean, Makoto Shinkai, the writer director of this film, he has such an eye for animation in like every single aspect. It's so weird. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he started out his career working in animation. He was mainly a background person, which is why oftentimes the landscape shots and why he does so many wide shots is because that's kind of like where his techniques started. And as someone who's seen not all, but a lot of his work, this I think is his most impressive visually yet. I think there's so many like one take shots. Like there's a shot, this is open spoiler, so we can talk about everything in this, but there's one shot where Sota in the chair is chasing Daijin underneath cars and stuff on like the highway or something, and Suzume's trying to chase after them, and it's all in one shot, and you're like going under the cars and you're swooping around, and I was just like, whoa, they did not have to do that, but they went out of their way to do it, and I just love that type of stuff in Shinkai stuff. What did you think about the animation in the movie?
God, it was just so beautiful. You know what? Another thing I noticed too was like the lens flares. I was like, oh my God, I don't know. There was just something about it that had just like a unique like texture to it, if that even makes sense. And I was just like, man, do you know if this was actually hand drawn or is it like computer made to look hand drawn? Do you know?
It actually is hand drawn. A lot of anime is still, and there's been arguments about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, because I think it does slow down the animation process in the anime industry. So there's still a lot of discourse on it, but most anime still do draw on paper and then compile the papers together, and then they'll do the coloring and stuff in a computer to make sure it's all nice and clean. But the drawings are like that, and I believe Shinkai even does some of the animation himself too. Like he shows some of the storyboards of his stuff, and they're incredibly detailed. it's insane. But yeah, this, I believe, unless this is some new innovation in anime technology, this was probably drawn on paper as well.
Yeah, it looked great. I just like stunning. I couldn't look away from it. And I was just so glad because I didn't expect this movie to be playing in Prime. Because normally they save that for like, superhero movies or like really big, I don't know, action movies. And when I saw it was playing in Prime, I was like, oh, I get that big screen. I get the leather recliner. So it was really nice to have that experience for this movie.
I mean, they didn't have it for me in Prime. They had that reserved for Mario. But my theater, I think it's a much smaller theater than the one you go to. They only have 2 premium screens, which is one IMAX and one Prime Dolby. And so the Dolby was for Mario, but they had Suzume in IMAX. So I got to see it in IMAX, which no complaints from me there. It was like this huge 70-foot screen. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then that, I think especially that, I would still love to hear it in Dolby because the Dolby sound is unmatched. But the animation, like that big, is just absolutely spectacular. You did mention that you saw this in the dub. I have not seen this in the dub. I've seen it twice so far. I've only seen it in the sub. What was the dub like? Because I usually know, you asked if I have a preference. I usually don't, because in most cases, voice actors, especially the ones who work in anime, in all dubs are very, very talented. But I think I usually, in most cases, still will opt to just by default go to the Japanese sub. I think that has to do with the fact that was the original way it was filmed, and every dub actor after that is trying to go off of that template of the Japanese. Not that their performances are lesser or anything like that, but just they're trying to match what was done before. And so I think I try to, I don't know, subconsciously, I'm just like, oh yeah, I'll just go with the Japanese sub. So what was the dub like? Does it sound a little, because sometimes, people will post clips of like, Dragon Ball Z or something like that. Yeah. And they'll be like, this sounds really weird in English. Yeah. Like, was there anything weird like that? Or was it like just a really solid dub?
No, this was a really solid dub. And it was really annoying because after the film, I was trying to figure out who does her voice, but in the dub, and I couldn't find her. Oh, well, this is open spoiler. So I could only find the young Suzume, voice actress name, and I could not find the adult version's name of the dub actress. So I wanted to know because I was like, she sounded really familiar, and I'm sure I must have watched something else that she's done. But I thought it was perfect. I would love to see it again with the English subtitles. I honestly don't think I'm going to have time to see it again while it's in theaters. But when it's available to stream, I'll probably show David, because he didn't get a chance to go with me today, and just show him like how gorgeous it is. Because I would love to see this movie again.
I think another thing is I think with certain shows I can do the dub, like with Dragon Ball Z, or I watched it won Anime of the Year at the Crunchyroll Anime Awards this year, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, because those don't take place in Japan. I think when it's like in the culture and there's so many language things that they do, or like when they bow, or when they say like certain things like itadakimasu, like right before they eat. It sometimes it gets lost in translation what they're doing. But I've definitely watched I've watched Weathering with You and Your Name in the dub as well as the sub. And so I wouldn't be shocked at all if this dub is just as great as those two, because it's still, a Shinkai production, and he usually knows what he's doing. An interesting thing about the Japanese actors is I read an interview that Rob actually sent me. He was like, hey, Suzume, go watch this. I don't even know if Rob has seen Suzume. I need to ask him if he's seen it. But Shinkai was talking about why he chose the actors that he did for the sub. And I know that you haven't seen the sub, but I would recommend, if you're not going to have a chance to see it in theaters, I would recommend to at least watch the trailer, because you get that sense even from the trailer. But he said that Shinkai said that the actors that he chose had never done animation before, that they were actors who only did live action work. And so when they came and auditioned, they were very uncomfortable. And it was that uncomfortableness that he said it seemed to him that the actors were very vulnerable. And he knew that was how he needed the characters to feel. And so he basically purposefully chose inexperienced actors for these roles to make it that match the characters properly. And I don't know if they did that with the English dub either. I assume it was probably fine, because if it's a great actor, they can pull off anything regardless of their level or not. But I just thought that was really interesting that And it was a choice that I don't think a lot of filmmakers would do, which I think is something so special about Shinkai's movies, is that there's something so different about them. Like you watch it and it's like, it's so unusual, but at the same time, it feels so familiar as well. Like you feel like at home when you're watching a Shinkai movie. And maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm like, maybe his films speak directly to me.
That's a good way of wording it.
Yeah.
The whole time I was watching, I felt like comfortable, and I don't know. It was like a very welcoming experience.
Is great. Okay, so now we'll actually get into the movie and talk about some of the things there. We talked about your experience with the movie. What was your impressions like with the movie itself? Like, I know you said it was near perfect, but some more thoughts about that.
Yeah. So going into it, didn't know what kind of movie this was. The cardboard cutout I walked by on the way into the theater room was the door. So I was like, oh, okay, it's going to be something with like some kind of portal or some kind of door that appears. It started off and it kind of reminded me of Alice in Wonderland a little bit. Just, finding this different world and just this girl who is like plucked out of her normal life and then on this adventure. But I don't know. There was a lot of humor in this too that I was not expecting. For example, the convertible, when
oh my gosh,
it wouldn't close in the rain. And he was like, "Oh, we're almost there." And then I forgot what they called it, but it's like their version of Siri was like, "Oh, 35 more minutes," and she's like, "That's not even close." And then when they ended up driving the car off the road, and then the convertible closed, that was hilarious. So I did like that they had some humor throughout that all worked for me. There was nothing that was like cringy or like over the top. Everything worked for me. And it was just such a unique, different story. And it wasn't anything like I could not have predicted this is what I was about to watch, which is really fun for me.
And you said you hadn't seen any of the marketing. Something that's interesting about the marketing is, or about the movie itself, is that the film about halfway through completely changes. Sota becomes the keystone, and then Suzume's on her own for this. I guess she gets with her aunt and Serizawa in the car, but for the most part, she's on her own in that second half. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the trailers don't market the second half at all. The Japanese and the English trailers only show that first half. And so for me, and I don't know, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on this, but to me, when we got to the end of that first half, I thought we were at the end of the movie. I thought we were at the climax of the movie because that's all that had been marketed. And then once he became the keystone, I was like, oh, is it going to be like a tragedy? What's going on here?
I know.
and then it kept going, and I was like, oh. And I think that sudden change, at least for my first viewing, and I saw Chris Stuckman talk about this, and he agrees to an extent that and it's probably my only problem with the movie is that you're like ramping up, and then suddenly you have to start all the way back from zero again. And it was almost like it for like 10 minutes there, it dragged for a second, and then it picked back up. The second time I watched it, now that I knew that it was coming, it didn't drag for me anymore. But I think that first time there was almost like a whiplash of, oh my gosh, we're at the end of the movie. And then suddenly, oh, we're not. We're only halfway through. There's another hour left. What were your thoughts seeing that structure split and how different the two halves are?
Yeah. Okay. So I did notice, the split. But for me, I didn't think it was over because I did not think they would end it on a sad note. I was like, no, they're not going to end it without her saving him somehow. I just didn't know how she was going to save him or when. But I did like, I don't know which, like if I had to choose a half that I liked more also, I don't know which half I liked more.
Have you seen Hamilton? No.
So like in 2020 when they put that
like on Disney Plus or
the film one, I watched like the first half of it, but I
oh, you couldn't get into it?
I couldn't really get into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
I think it's different. I think I need to see that like on stage.
Right. I was such a huge fan of Hamilton. I had all the songs memorized. So when the musical came out, I re-entered my Hamilton phase because I was a musical theater kid. It was really bad. And now I'm in the phase again. So it's all my mind all over again. But I compared this to Hamilton in the sense that the two halves are very much like the Hamilton's two acts. So the first half of Hamilton covers about 20 years of the Revolutionary War. Alexander Hamilton starts at like 19. He ends, his son's born. America becomes their own nation, all that. But throughout, there's so many characters that get introduced and then leave, and they're covering so much and moving from location to location. It was almost like that with the first half of Suzume. You meet a character, you'll stay there for like 15 minutes, and then Daijin will go somewhere else and they'll follow him to the next door. And then you just keep meeting new characters. And then the second half is a lot like the second half of Hamilton, which I know you didn't see that, but I guess I'll try to explain it. The second half is, it takes place in a much shorter window of time, and it's very intimate. So it's about Hamilton's fall from grace now that he's reached like his highest level. And it has to do with like the same few characters. Like it's about him, Jefferson, Aaron Burr, Washington, and his wife. And like kind of all the drama that they go through once America has become a nation, and then, Alexander's fallen, then eventually his death. And then in this, it was like that again, where instead of having, new characters show up and then leave, it was like suddenly we're stuck with three characters. We have Suzume, and then we have her aunt, and then Serizawa driving the car. And I think that added to the structural difference as well, because not only are they completely paced differently, they're very different in their approach to it, which I thought was interesting as well. So I guess another question, it's almost like a leap off of the previous question. Along with the structural difference, what did you think of the way that they kind of did the characters differently, where one is a very ensemble focused thing, and then the second one is about really like three characters?
Yeah. Ooh, okay. That's a good question. I kind of preferred the second half with the characters because I liked that they were all together. I did think it was kind of interesting, like, I can't remember. Chica? Was that her name?
Which one?
Chica? The one that was on the motorbike who drops the oranges and then
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
I was like, we're introduced to this new character. And then it was like just for that part of the story. And I was like, and some of the characters kept coming and going. So I did like the second half where it was the trio. Yeah, I prefer that. But what you're saying right now is kind of reminding me of Barbarian. Have you seen Barbarian yet?
Yes. I loved Barbarian. Yeah.
Okay, so when you're talking about how the trailers for Suzume did not show the second act, right? And so that's why you thought it was over. When I saw Barbarian for the first time at that point, none of the Justin Long stuff was out as marketing at all.
You're right. I see where you're going.
They did that on purpose. So then I went into it thinking, it's just like a single location going to take place at this Airbnb. And then it just kept going and going and going. And I think that's for me why I was like, oh my God, I had no idea there was all this other stuff that was going to take place in this movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just interesting. But then once it came out, then they started changing the marketing and they put Justin Long. They even had like a trailer where I think they made it look like it was like a romantic comedy for a little bit. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just very similar the way you're talking about the marketing for this and the trailers and then the marketing for Barbarian.
I think it was, and I saw it, the second time I saw it, I was with my older brother, and he, I don't think he had seen the trailers either, but I think he had the same experience. Like when he came out, I was like, what'd you think? He was like, yeah, there was kind of a weird split there and it dragged for a second, but we got back into it. And this isn't new to Shinkai movies. In every movie, I know you haven't seen them, so I won't try to spoil them, but it's the same thing that happened. So here was like Sota died, which I guess the audience didn't think was actually going to happen. Or at least he dies temporarily. Or I guess he didn't die, but it's treated like a character death.
Yeah.
And then, so that the same thing happens with Weathering with You, and the same thing happens with Your Name, where there's the big plot twist happens, the big revelation. So he's a master at midpoints, where he's able to, like, I mean, if you want to take like a screenwriting class 101 on midpoints, just watch every Makoto Shinkai movie, because he has nailed it. I don't know what this dude is doing, but he does the same thing in every movie. I think the interesting thing about it is throughout Shinkai's entire career, he usually focuses on duos. He focuses on two co-leads. Suzume, and I could be wrong, I haven't seen every Makoto Shinkai film, so I could be wrong, but I believe this is his first time doing a single character lead project, which is very interesting because in Your Name and with Weathering with You, I'll be very vague about it, but the first half and the second half usually prioritize different characters. So like in Your Name, the first half prioritizes the male lead, or you're mainly seeing things from his perspective. And then the second half is from the female lead. And then the same thing with Weathering with You, except it's the first half female lead, second half male lead. Here, it's all Suzume. And then the characters around her change. And I thought that was a super interesting approach. And I will say Suzume as a character, very endearing. She was great. And she needed to be because she carries this entire thing on her back. Yeah. What did you think of Suzume as a character?
I loved her. I thought she was great. And yeah, she did have to carry the whole thing. So it's great that we were able to make that connection with her. Because if not, I don't know that I would have loved this film as much as I did. But the voice actress who did her voice, and I'm so annoyed that I couldn't find it. I know I only looked for like 10 seconds, but it just kept showing me young Suzume. But she had like a very distinct tone to her voice too that I really enjoyed. So I think that helped sell it even more. And I just thought, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I just thought her monologue to her younger self at the end, the little speech she gave, I thought that was really sweet and just like a perfect way to end the film. And yeah, I ended up loving her character.
I mean, that's a great segue. So I saw some people, usually the criticism with Suzume so far is if you don't like the movie, it's because you predicted what happened and like the twist and everything. And so at the end, it didn't resonate with you. For me, as soon as I saw the opening scene and they panned up to, and little Suzume thought that it was her mother, and they panned up and they didn't show her face, I was like, oh, it's not her mom. It's going to be older Suzume. And so I was able to predict that, but it didn't stop when that moment happened and I still had tears in my eyes. And I was like, this is just so sweet. I also think anime, the way they draw characters in anime is so, they're so they're so full of expressions that especially when a child in anime starts crying, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, what's happening? So when Suzume is like bawling and she has like these 3-inch thick tears flowing out of her eyes, I was like, oh man. So that didn't really bother me. Were you able to predict that as well? And if you did or didn't, how did the twist overall still affect you?
I did predict it, but I don't know when exactly I predicted it. It wasn't when you did. It wasn't the first shot that we get where it doesn't show the face, but it was definitely before she walks over to her younger self.
Oh, like when she put on the
exactly
coat?
I figured it out. Yeah. So it's like, when did I figure it out exactly? But it didn't bother me that I did. I still really enjoyed it. Thought it was very impactful. Same thing. I'm going to keep bringing up horror, but same thing with Scream 6. I was able to predict. I don't want to spoil that.
Wait, multiple killers. Yeah, we won't spoil that. You predicted who the killers were? How?
Oh yeah, dude. I'm telling you, Scream.
No way.
It's my favorite horror franchise, and I am very good at predicting who the killer or killers are. And I kept it to myself because I didn't want to spoil it for David, but I was like, oh, I know that person. But with Scream, the thing is, I couldn't figure out the motive or why was that person working with that? Like, I couldn't figure out the connection. So it still worked really well for me to Scream. And then, with this movie, I was able to figure it out, but it did not take away at all from the impact or from the emotional, impact.
That's interesting. Okay, we'll have to talk about Scream some other time, not in this discussion. Another big twist in the movie is the character Daijin, the little cat. Because in the marketing and in like the first, like I would say 60 to 70% of the movie, you think he's the antagonist. And then it turns out at the end that he was just this really pathetic cat who just wanted to love Suzume. And then only viewed, I guess, Sota as like an obstacle because I guess Daijin saw that Suzume liked Sota and was like, oh, I need to get you out of here so that way I can have Suzume all to myself. So what did you think about the twist with Daijin? Did you think that worked and everything like that about Daijin?
So the only thing I knew about Daijin going into this was like a couple nights ago, I messaged you like a GIF of him. And I was like, oh, how cute. There's going to be like a sweet little cat in this movie. And then he ended up being an asshole for the first half of the movie. And I was like, this is not what I was expecting. Yeah. But I ended up loving Daijin as well, the character. I just thought, I don't know, there was something about the way they animated him that just made him so lovable. I don't know. And I was not expecting him to be a a little trickster. I guess that's the word, a trickster.
I mean,
okay, so he started out as an asshole and then turned into a trickster. There we go.
It's misunderstood. No, that scene where like they keep following him on social media throughout the movie, and there's one where he's just prancing like along the bridge, like on top of the bridge, and like the helicopters are filming him, and I thought that was just hilarious. But yeah, definitely seeing the movie a second time and knowing. Obviously, I knew about the Suzume twist, you know, that it was going to be her. So that didn't bother me at all. But trying to view, like, why is Daijin doing what he's doing the second time? That, it became so much more obvious to me that I was like, oh, why do they even think he's being mean? Like I guess his words the first time you see it are so vague. And then also, Shinkai does a great job of making you only know what Suzume knows. And so everything is made to seem like Daijin is the bad guy. But once you know that he's not, since his dialogue is so intentionally vague, you end up interpreting it differently the second time you hear it. And then you're like, oh, he's not doing anything wrong. I mean, obviously every time he talks to Sota and he's like, you're in the way. Like, obviously he wants to get rid of Sota. But everything else, like, it's very clear that he's not, like, I guess, evil intentioned. He's trying to show them these doors and I mean, obviously, to lead them to where Sota is going to have to become the keystone. But, I mean, he's still helping in his own way to prevent the disasters, which I thought was interesting. And when, even the first time I saw it, when I was still like, screw Daijin, I hate him. Even when after Suzume wakes up in the sewer, and he's like, don't you love me? And she like picks him up and she's like about to throw him. And then she drops him. And then he like shrunk back down to really skinny. And he's like,
that was sad.
He was like, she doesn't love me anymore. Even though I didn't like him, I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. Suzume, you better say sorry. But I thought Daijin was great. It's also a super weird thing because Shinkai's never done anything like that either. And he in an interview, he was like, yeah, basically, I just wanted like an emblem of chaos in the movie, and he was like, I wanted it to be like an animal, to be like the body of it. And he was like, the first animal I thought of that personifies chaos was a cat, and so I made it a cat. And I was like, it's fair. Yeah, we don't like cats around here.
Except for Puss in Boots.
But I mean, you saw the movie. He can cook his own food. He can stand. He can use the toilet. Like, it's great. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, I thought Daijin was great. I guess I mentioned the structure thing. I guess another issue for me would be, and it's not like a major issue. I guess it'd be more like a nitpick. Is that I think that the film, in some instances, tries to do so much in order to, in a good intention of fleshing out every single character. So, but I do think that there's a lot going on with the characters, like specifically with like the ant subplot and with Serizawa talking about like, oh, Sota owes me money. That was obviously like a joke, but introducing like that story subplot and everything like that. I was like, this is interesting, but was this necessary for the story being told, or is this just some, obviously good intentioned character fleshing out, but just fluff that didn't necessarily need to be in there? Did any of that bother you or no?
Not really. I think that the thing with his friend paid off at the end, because I was about to get up and leave when the credits started going, but then there were a couple more little scenes like spliced in, and the one where he's like, oh, I really owed him money. I was like, oh my gosh. And I thought the whole relationship with Suzume and her aunt, I thought that was really sweet. So yeah, all the character stuff really worked for me. But I agree, like some of it, it wasn't necessary, but I did enjoy it.
I think that's the thing. It's like, it wasn't bad, but I don't know if it was necessary. I think so most people love Your Name the most. I'm sure even you, who hasn't really seen a lot of anime, you've probably heard people mention Your Name a lot.
Yeah.
For me, his follow-up film, Weathering with You, I think that is a perfect movie. Titanic's my favorite movie of all time. I think Weathering with You might be the most perfect movie I've ever seen. Like, everything in there for me just works, and there's nothing I would change about it. Because I feel like...
Can I ask you really quick?
Yeah.
To watch, what is it called? Weathering with You?
Weathering with You, yeah.
To watch that, do I have to have seen anything else? Like, is it a standalone?
It takes place in the same world as Your Name. It's not a direct sequel. I would say Suzume is even a sequel to these two. They're almost like, it's almost like a spiritual trilogy where like they're about different characters, but he's like carrying themes throughout every film. that keep developing. But I would say I would start with Your Name, and then I would watch Weathering with You, because this isn't, I guess it's maybe a minor spoiler, but characters from Your Name cameo in Weathering with You, and Weathering with You takes place after. So I guess maybe seeing how some characters interact in Weathering with You, you might see in Your Name and be like, oh, that's how they're going to end up, and da. So I would recommend start with Your Name, and then get ready for Weathering with You, because Weathering with You is the only movie that okay, that's not true. It was for a while the only movie until Shang-Chi came out that I watched twice in one day.
Wow. Okay.
I bought it. I have it on Blu-ray. It's behind me somewhere back there.
Oh, nice.
But I put it in. I watched the entire thing, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go, I guess, make a video on it. I started scripting the video, and then about 3 hours later, before even filming it or anything, I was back in the living room, and I put it back on to watch it again. It actually, and I've told Rob about this, I've never had a movie, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, I've never had a movie make me depressed except for Weathering with You. So obviously I want to work in film. I want to be a filmmaker. I guess I already am. I made a documentary, but when I saw Weathering with You, it resonated with me so hard that I entered like a 2-month state of like the deepest depression I've ever been in, because I felt like I would never make a movie that impacted the audience the way that movie impacted me. And so it was almost like, is there even a point in me trying to make movies?
Oh man.
And so
it's gonna happen though. It's gonna happen.
And but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I mean the movie is so good that it made me be like, oh, I'll never make anything that good, and so I was depressed. But at the same time, it's a really great movie, and now I'm past that. I've done documentaries since then. I'm writing things now, but now I've seen Weathering with You probably like 10 times in the past 2 years. Oh, it is so good. I'll just put it on. I can't even watch like clips of it on YouTube. Like if I see it in my recommended, like a clip or like a piece of the soundtrack, I have to just scroll past it, because I'll put it on and I'll waste 2 hours again watching Weathering with You. It is, most people think Your Name is his best movie. And I've seen a lot of people say that they think Suzume is better than Weathering with You as well. I think that those people are crazy, but I at the end of the day, they're all great movies. But yeah, Weathering with You is just something completely different to me. They're all very similar though. I think that, and you haven't seen his other films, so but the vibe I got from Suzume, and I spoke to my brother about this, who has also seen Your Name and Weathering with You, is that this felt like it had a sense of finality to it. Like it almost felt like an end of a career movie. Like he was like, okay, that's my big send off, guys, bye. Now, obviously, I think he turns 50 this year. He's not done. He's not done at all. But I think, so now what my theory is that this may have been an end of an era. So now he might go into live action. He might try to do different genres, unlike what he's done with Suzume. Because I think if I were you, I would say do it all in one day. No, but Your Name, Weathering with You, and then rewatch Suzume. Like, so I guess if you're gonna rewatch Suzume in the Japanese dub, watch Your Name and Weathering with You first, because I think they'll make a great pairing together. They're one of the main criticisms of Shinkai movies is that they're all very similar, but I think that's intentional with these past 3 movies, because like I said, I think they're all kind of like a spiritual trilogy in a way. And I think when you see those movies and you rewatch Suzume and those credits start playing the way they do, it really feels like he's ending like an era and he's about to start something new. So I'm excited to see where he goes forward. I guess any closing thoughts about Suzume, about the director, about anime as a whole, and any closing thoughts about any of that?
Well, I will say I am super appreciative that you recommended this movie to me, because honestly, I didn't know about it. And it's so funny because yesterday I saw that movie Mafia Mama, and I invited my friend to go with me, like literally like 2 hours before I was going to go see it. And I was like, hey, I've never heard of it, but let's go. And then when I put up my review, every comment is never heard of this movie. And I was like, what? I only knew about it because I saw the trailer one time, and it's Toni Collette and I love her. So it's just interesting that there's 2 movies out this weekend that aren't getting much marketing. So I'm glad that you put it on my radar and that you recommended it to me, and I really enjoyed it. I have a question though. So knowing that horror is my favorite genre, is there a specific anime you could recommend to me that is in the horror genre?
See, the thing is, there aren't many great ones. You can probably count them on one hand. And I think that's the issue with them. And I guess I've seen, compared to you, I've seen infinitely more anime. But I guess in the grander anime sphere, I'm still relatively new. So there's not many that I've seen. And the ones I have seen, I would say you've probably heard of Death Note. It's not a horror thing, but I would say it's more of a thriller mystery type thing.
Yeah.
And that's usually a lot of people's gateway anime. It was was it my second or third? I think it was my third anime that I watched after Sword Art Online and Clanad, which I ended up writing a play on Clanad, which you can now see on my channel. I wrote and directed or I guess I didn't write it. I adapted it. It was crazy story about Clanad. It's a 2-season anime. Each season has 22, 23 episodes. They're all about half an hour each. I took that and I had to smush it together into 40 minutes for a 1-act play competition for our student direct. We got a standing ovation. There were tears. We didn't win anything. We didn't move forward. Other shows beat us. But I think we got the audience vote, and that's what matters.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, but yeah, I mean, I would not recommend anybody watches that because I don't, now that I'm looking back on it, I'm like, oh, Israel, what were you thinking with some of these choices? But yeah, I will try to keep you posted on new anime that come out. I don't think that there's anything airing right now that's horror related. That's the thing. It's such an underserved medium in anime, and then when it does get served, it's not all that great.
Is Chainsaw Man horror or not really?
Don't watch Chainsaw Man.
Oh,
here's why.
I like the design of the character. I saw the poster.
No, it's a great anime, and I believe I don't know if Rob finished it, but I know he started it. The thing about Chainsaw Man is it is so anime that if it cannot be your first anime because because it's so extreme on certain tropes that you already need to appreciate that I think it might turn you off. It'd be like someone's first movie being like a Wes Anderson movie, which is very different from a lot of other movies. But if you're a cinephile, you love that stuff. But if it was like someone's first time, they might be like, and that's the only experience they had with movies. They'd probably be like, oh, I don't know if I want to watch another one if it didn't hit. So
yeah, that makes sense.
I would get a few anime of different genres under your belt. Like I would watch. I mean, I can give you a whole list, but I would watch. Death Note. I would obviously recommend that as like if you're gonna start something, I would recommend start Death Note, and then I guess keep me posted with your thoughts, and we'll bring you back on if you finish it.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And then watch like an isekai. Isekai is like an out of this world type thing. It's like comic book genre in movies. It's like the most flooded marketplace, and it's all the big shows. And the sad thing is a lot of them are very mediocre. But the good ones are very, very good. And then watch like a slice of life, watch a comedy, and then maybe go into Chainsaw Man. But yeah, Chainsaw Man, there's so many things that even as someone who loves anime, there were things in there that I was like, what? But yeah, it's a great show if you love anime. I don't know. I mean, hey, maybe you could watch it and maybe be like, oh yeah, that was like the greatest thing I've ever seen. I don't know. But, I would not recommend it because I think it might turn you off from it.
I'll start with Death Note.
Death Note is great. I think there's a lot of people. Never mind. Oh, no, I won't say that. Enjoy Death Note. I guess closing thoughts for me. Obviously, I love this movie. It came out in 2022 in Japan, but I mean that was like in September, and we got it so much later. To me, I consider this a 2023 movie. And if I consider it a 2023 movie, it's my favorite movie of the year so far, with Air like right below it. I thought it was great. I think it's such a shame that they don't market these because they're such a different experience from the same old, I guess not the same old, but the typical Hollywood stuff that we get with the same actors. And then you go to the theater, especially if you go in blind like you did. And it's like, it's a completely different story structure. There's like a completely different mythology. Usually with our stuff, it's like the same type of themes. If it does something spiritual, it's the same type of, it's like the Force or something like that. But when you go to Japan, their lore in Japan, like with their religions and their philosophy, is so crazy. Like there's like every movie that Shinkai does, he finds some way to include it. And so in here, with earthquakes, ancient Japanese people believed that with earthquakes, that there was a giant god monster underneath Japan that would like awaken. And that's what he based the movie off of, is that. And he does that with every movie. So Weathering with You is about a sunshine girl who can pray the rain away. Your Name is about star-crossed lovers, and because there's a thing in Japan about with a red ribbon. Like if two people get tied with a red ribbon, they'll always find each other and fall in love no matter what. And so there's so many things that I guess to us in particular, I guess maybe to the Japanese people, maybe it's like for them, it's like how we view American stuff, where it's like it's still good, but it's like we've seen it before. But to us, a lot of this stuff, I mean, it is foreign, okay, but it's very foreign to what we usually see, which I think it's so interesting. So please, everybody, I think it's playing through this weekend, but since it's not performing too well, I don't know if it'll stay past that. So everybody, please go see Suzume. I don't care if you see it in the English dub. I don't care if you see it in the Japanese. I don't care if you see it with like Spanish subtitles, whatever. Go see Suzume. It is a great decision. It's a great movie. You got 2 recommendations from these lads here. I don't know if you give movies like ratings or anything. I don't know if you do that.
I don't really, but I would definitely highly recommend this movie.
Mm-hmm. So my rating system, I don't know if I've ever brought it up on the Otaku Experience. My rating system from the bottom is Abomination, Painfully Average, Fine, McDonald's, Fantabulous, God Tier, and then the coveted Supreme, which is all the way up here, which we don't talk about because no anything ever gets that, except Weathering with You and Titanic. But nice. I would put this probably in the good God Tier area. Fantabulous, God Tier, somewhere around there. Really solid movie. I think it works even better on rewatch, so I would recommend, Taylor, if you get a chance. I know you're busy, but and then I would also I'll probably see it again if my truck wasn't having issues. I probably would have gone to see it again today. Maybe I'll go see the English dub. Anyways, Taylor, it has been great having you on the Otaku Experience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this.
It.
Oh, of course. And where can audiences find you?
Ooh. You guys can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, and on my own YouTube channel, 50 Shades of Tay, with 3 Ys. And as I've been saying, 0 dads. So there's that. But I really appreciate it, Israel. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on this show, for recommending this movie to me. And I would love to collaborate with you again very soon. Hopefully we'll do something on my channel. I would love to come back on the Otaku Experience. So
watch Death Note. We'll bring you back on. We'll talk about Death Note. We'll have a blast. There are so many things in Death Note. You're going to be like, what was that? What was this? And I would be like, I don't know. It's going to be great. Well, anyways, Taylor, thank you so much for being here, and we'll chat some other time.
Thank you.
All right, so often considered to be the greatest manga of all time is Berserk. Now, if you haven't read the manga and you still think that name sounds a little bit familiar, it might be because you've watched one of the mid-adaptations of this manga, where they butcher everything and it looks terrible, yada, yada, yada. I personally have not seen them because I don't hate myself. And I have been reading Berserk. I'm not fully caught up, but I've read probably, I would say, around 10 chapters or so. And it does live up to the hype. It is amazing. It is beautifully drawn. The story is deep. The characters are great. It's just awesome. Now, the creator, author, and artist of the Berserk manga, Kentaro Miura, has tragically passed away back in May of 2021. And so after he died, the manga went on hiatus for a little while after the final chapter that he wrote was released in September of 2021. So ever since September, the manga had not continued. And many of the fans were left not really knowing what the update was, how this was going to play out, when the manga was going to come back, if it was going to come back, or whatever. But we do have some really cool news if you're a Berserk fan. And that is, according to Manga Mogura, the manga of Berserk will resume serialization in the Young Animal magazine issues 9 through 10 on April 28th, over a year and a half since it went on hiatus. And a close friend of Miura, the author, Koji Mori, will continue the manga based on the information given to him by Miura. And so, to me, if you're a Berserk fan, obviously it's very sad to hear about the what happened to the creator, the author, and him not being able to
to see the story all the way through. I assume that he, obviously, since he's such a talented storyteller, I assume that he had already planned his way out, or planned the story out all the way through. And he just shared what information that there was for the rest of the story with his friend, Koji Mori, who will be continuing the manga. It's definitely not going to be the same, but that doesn't mean it still can't be great. And I hope that we're able to honor that author's legacy, as well as it's still maintaining the heart and the soul of Berserk. It will always be missing something. It's going to be like how Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was missing Chadwick Boseman. It's never going to be the same, but that doesn't mean we can't have a great story still being told. Like, personally, I know there were some people who didn't like Wakanda Forever. Personally, I thought Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was great. And I still would have preferred a version with Chadwick Boseman there, obviously. But I still thought that the film we got was very powerful, was filled with the passion and love to honor Chadwick's legacy. And I still love Wakanda Forever. And hopefully we can have that same type of effect with the Berserk manga. There's not much not much else that we know, really, other than that it will return later this month with a new writer, and I guess we'll stay tuned and see how that plays out. So one of the biggest anime airing right now, is and probably the face of the spring 2023 season, and maybe even the face of what will be the face of the 2023 anime year as a whole. And it's this little show called Oshinoko. Don't know if you heard of it, but it took the pop culture world by storm with its first episode last week, launching it to the #1 spot on my anime list, making it the top rated anime of all time. And the series is actually, I checked before I started filming, it is still holding on to the top slot, but it is 0.13 lower than what it was when it debuted at #1 last week, which is still giving it a 0.14 lead over Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is underneath it, which they will eventually take it back. The Full Metal Alchemist, they've already commenced their attack, the Full Metal Alchemist fans, and they are they're a coordinated attack on Oshinoko, and the Oshinoko people, they don't even stand a chance. They have nowhere near the amount of numbers. So unless they can pull like a Gideon Bible story thing, if God is on their side, maybe they can turn this around, but they're not. Oshinoko will probably get pushed down to #2 and maybe even #3 or 4, just so the Full Metal Alchemist fans can make sure that it never has a chance of coming back up. But anyways, regardless of Oshinoko, the author of the manga, he's involved in the anime as well, but the author and creator of the manga is also the author and creator of Kaguya-sama, which is another thing that you may have heard of. And similar story, last year it topped Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood with its 3rd season, and then Full Metal Alchemist destroyed it and made it drop by like 0.2 points. It was really, really sad to see. But regardless, the author of those 2 mangas, basically this author is on the top of the world right now. Like, dude, 2 of your franchises that you created and wrote have both gotten anime adaptations and have become some of the most beloved anime of all time. That's crazy. But he has officially announced, Akasaka has announced that that he's doing a new manga called Love Agency, which will begin on April 27th in the combined 22nd and 23rd, geez, Israel, come on, of Weekly Young Jump. Not much is known about it other than the title and a little bit of artwork, but obviously everyone is going to read it, including myself, so that way we can get a jump on the next greatest anime of all time. Another manga that everyone will read, especially now, is Assassination Classroom. Now, Assassination Classroom has actually been in the mainstream news lately, and this happened last week. So Assassination Classroom has been banned in Florida and Wisconsin middle schools. It could be high schools as well, but I could be wrong, but as far as I know, it's just the middle schools, based on parental concerns about rising instances of school shootings. Someone named Jennifer Pippin, who is the chair of the Indian River County chapter of Moms for Liberty, that's a giant title, said that we don't want students to think it's okay to kill their teachers. Citizens Defending Freedom also announced that it would take action against the manga for both its explicit sexual content and its alleged promotion of gun violence against teachers. So I heard this. First, I saw the headline and I was like, well, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. So we didn't have time to cover it last week. Obviously, last week was a very stressful week for me. And so we could only talk about the super, super big stories. But this week we can kind of talk about it a little bit. And to me, this just sounds really goofy. Look, the explicit sexual content defense is a much stronger defense than the gun violence defense to me. And I can get how that would be. Obviously, we've been having rising instances of school shootings for years now in America. And it's a very sad thing to see. And our leaders seem to not want to do anything about it other than ban manga. And so what this just shows to me, we'll talk about the sexual thing in a second, but with the gun violence thing, and I usually don't try to get into politics on this, but what this usually, what this is showing me is this reminds me of the argument that we've heard for years now that video games causing people to be more violent. Oh my gosh, don't play Modern Warfare or don't play Call of Duty because you might get, desensitized to gun violence and you might start killing people. Or when the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie came out in 2019 and everybody was like, oh no, this movie's going to make people think it's okay to become a homicidal maniac and people are going to become serial killers and da-da-da-da-da. Time and time again, this theory has been debunked. It's not true. It just doesn't happen, okay? I think people, unless people have a mental illness, in which case I pray that those people get the help that they need, most people can see that a story is a story and that art is art and it's not like some bearing to be, hey, go do this, right? I never once watched Joker, which is a great movie, by the way, and I never once watched Joker and been like, hey, you know what? Maybe I should do that. Like that never happened. That never occurred to me. I never watched or I never played The Last of Us and thought, hey, you know what? Maybe I should go beat someone in the head with a crowbar. Like that's never occurred to me. This doesn't happen. And it seems like our leaders are trying to, in an attempt to appease people who are upset about, and rightfully so, upset about all the rising gun violence. It makes it seem like they're actually doing something about it when really they're not doing it because this theory has been proven wrong again and again. Now, if they were to say, hey, this manga has sexual content in it, and we don't think that's okay for explicit sexual content, we don't think that's okay for middle schoolers. We'll leave it in like the high schools, things like that. I would understand that. Hey, there's certain maturity levels. Students learn things at different ages or in different grades in schools, and so I would personally understand that. Maybe have an opposing opinion, in which case I would love to hear that in the comments down below. But at the same time, this has really done nothing because it's not banned statewide in these states. Because one, I don't really think they can do that. I mean, we've seen them try before. Anyways, I don't want to get into politics, but these students still have access to these books. There's Shonen Jump, there's apps, they can read it online illegally. They can go to the manga store or a bookstore and buy the book. They have done nothing. Or they can just go to Crunchyroll or High Dive or Netflix, wherever this anime is, and they can watch the anime there. They've really done nothing in the grand scheme of things. These people can still go and experience this stuff. And I don't see how, and I think it just shows the fact that they're not all that serious. They were just like, hey, we'll do this. Maybe it'll shut up people and then we can move on, rather than them actually trying to invoke change. That's it. That's my political TED talk for the day. I don't want to really get into that. I honestly, I don't really think that they've done much in pursuit of the problem that they're trying to solve. Okay, then we get into what is probably the saddest story for me today, which is that the girlfriend manga is ending. So Kanojo mo Kanojo, or girlfriend, if you don't know what that is the greatest manga of all time. So what it is, I'll give you a quick synopsis. There's no official synopsis that I wanted because all of them suck. I'll do it myself. Like Thanos, fine, I'll do it myself. Put the gauntlet on. This is the greatest manga of all time. Okay, so this stars a guy named Naoya, and he's dating a girl named Saki. She has red hair, and they're in a nice, beautiful, lovey-dovey high school relationship where they are very expressive about their love, which makes everyone around them super uncomfortable, including Saki, but it's hilarious. It's a comedy. And so then a freshman named Nagisa comes into the picture. She's a blue-haired girl, and she's like, hey, Naoya, I'm in love with you too. do you want to date me? And Naya's like, I'm dating Saki, but I do really want to date you though. I have an idea. So he goes over to Saki with Nagisa and he's like, yo, bro, do you mind if we like start dating her too? Like it's just a 3 thing, you know? And then Saki's like, what? And then, you know, they debate about it. And then, you know, he's eventually able to convince Nagisa to do that. And then we have a new girl named Milika. And then Saki's best friend starts getting in on the fun. It's hilarious. There's like 4 girls now, unless there's a 5th that I don't know about. I'm not caught up. But there's like 4 girls in there that are all in love with this dude. And it is great. It's hilarious. And it's so funny. It's so anime. And I cannot wait for season 2 of the anime to return, even though I already know what's going to happen because I've been reading the manga. But they have announced that this manga ends in 4 chapters, that they're in the final chapter, or they're in the final arc. And I'm really sad about this. Please don't end. The guys, come on, please don't end. Don't do this to me. But they're going to end it. And I mean, look, all good things must come to an end. I'm glad that the author is ending it on his own terms, or on their own terms, rather than, you know, the show or the manga not performing all that well anymore, and then the guy has to stop doing it. But, you know, I'm sad. This is going to be a sad day. I might reread the entire thing again. You too should read it as well, or check out the anime. Both are fantastic. Both are great. I can't decide which one I prefer more. Maybe the anime, because the anime can, well, I don't know. It's a thing. All right. Sad day for me. And with all of that major news out of the way, it's time for us to get into my favorite part of the show, the Goofy Woofy anime community. All right, so this week we don't have much. It's just one story, or it's just one thing. It's one video. And that is the voice actress of Ai Hoshino from Oshinoko, Ri Takahashi. And she did a performance. She recreated the Ai Hoshino performance from Oshinoko. Here's take a quick look at that. So I thought that this was really, really cute. I thought it was fun. Obviously, she's beautiful, and she's recreating, you know, if you know, I'm not going to spoil it, but if you know what happens in the episode, this is really, really, you know, that's all I'll say. But yeah, I thought it was really cute. I love that. I love when the actors and the people involved can get in on it and they can understand when there's something super, super hype. All I'll say is once Oshinoko, about a week out, realized how popular it was, the marketing for this show has been insane. They've been doing like collabs. They've been doing insane posters and images, and there's been tons of fan art. They've been doing great videos. They released a music video of the opening and the ending, and both were great. They did obviously this video. They've been killing it, and I thought this was super, super adorable. So pretty wholesome week in the anime community. There's no certified goofy moment this week, but hey, I think that in some cases that can be a benefit. You know, with the sad news of girlfriend ending, I think I'll take it. I'll take a good Goofy Woofy anime community this week. All right, and welcome to the lightning round, the part of the show where we zoom through some of the smaller, less important stories, starting with the Rick and Morty anime. So this anime premieres this year on Adult Swim and on Max. Terrible title, but that's not really what we talk about on this show. And then it will be a 10-episode spin-off of the mainline Rick and Morty show, directed by Takashi Sano, who directed Tower of God, which was a hugely popular and well-received anime. And Sano said the multiverse-straddling exploits of Rick and the gang pose challenges to the family bond, but they always rise to the occasion. It's such a life-affirming sight, and Jerry is no exception. I'm honored to have been given an opportunity to tell a new story about this amazing family. I hope you enjoy their adventures. Very, very cool. I probably won't watch this just mainly because I don't watch Rick and Morty. I've seen a couple episodes of Rick and Morty and I had a good time, but I've really no interest to keep watching it and to check this out. Maybe if this gets like a 9 out of 10 on my anime list, if this tops Full Metal Alchemist and becomes the next top-rated anime of all time, I'll check it out bar none. All right, guys, and it's finally time for us to check out this anime season's audience ranking, starting with anime trending. And so anime trending, we have the first anime in number 1. These are all new entries, starting with Hell's Paradise. Now, I still have not seen this. I've seen very few shows this season, but I've heard only amazing things about Hell's Paradise. It's kind of nice because once I finish the seasonal review, I'll have these really good anime that I can like binge 3 to 4 episodes of. It'll be great. And then at number 2, we have my love story with Yamada-kun at level 999. This was originally, if you remember, when we talked about on my channel as well as on the Otaku Experience, when we talked about what anime I was planning on watching this season. This was one of the shows that I didn't think was all that interesting, but I said that if it got great reviews and great reception, I would check it out. This definitely bodes well, and I will definitely check this out.
At number 3, we have Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, Season 2, which I need to check out, and I'm very excited to see how they handle how the end of Season 1 ended. So that's going to be interesting. At number 4, which is very surprising to many people, that it's all the way down at number 4, is Oshi no Ko. Now, something about this is there's been theories about this, is that, well, maybe Oshi no Ko just didn't have enough time to rank up to the number 1 spot. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. I mean, maybe, but I mean, look, people vote once the shows come out. So this was eligible for that week. So personally, once I am able to watch Anime Weekly, I wait till the end of the week to do that. Now, not everybody does that. And so I can understand that argument, but at the end of the day, the results are the results, and Anime Trending does things. You know, if those types of arguments always worked, we'd be like, well, why didn't Cyberpunk Edge Runners win the Anime Trending Anime Awards? It didn't. Bocchi the Rock did. And so maybe the next episode would win. Here's the thing. Maybe hype isn't everything. Maybe Oshi no Ko, to most people, was just a really solid episode. Maybe to the normies, it was a perfect episode. But to the Anime Trending fans, who we've talked about before, have seen tons of stuff and watched probably the most anime out of any subsection of the anime community, they probably thought that the episode was solid, but not the best episode that week. This doesn't mean that the episode's bad or anything like that. It just means that they just thought other episodes were better. I don't know why people are complaining about this. I thought the episode was just okay. I was able to predict everything that happened in the episode, and so when the big emotional payoffs happened later, it didn't affect me all that much. But this isn't a thing to complain about. It hit number 4. Congratulations, you win. And then at number 5, we had Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Swordsmith Village arc, and I believe this covers just the first episode. The first episode I obviously talked about when I saw the movie. Don't even get me started on that. But I thought that this first episode was pretty solid. My only problem with it would be that it really set nothing up going forward. This second episode changed that a little bit, and I thought that the second episode was decently solid as well. I still think that the first episode is better, but I think that this one set up a little bit more. Then at number 6, we have Tengoku Daimakyo, also known as Heavenly Delusion, and I've heard great things about this too. I've seen some screenshots of the show, and I'm like, what is happening? I need to watch that, but I don't have time to watch it just yet, other than like the big major shows that I really want to avoid spoilers on. At number 7, we have Skip and Loafer, which really bodes well for me because this was one of the ones that I was interested in watching, but I was scared that maybe it wouldn't be the greatest thing ever. This bodes really well that it's in the number 7. So I'm very excited about that. At number 8, we have Konosuba and Explosion on This Wonderful World. Once again, the Konosuba franchise shows up and they are very successful and very solid, which is very exciting to see. At number 9, we have Mashle Magic and Muscles, which is another one that it was my last choice to add in my initial list of what I was going to be watching. And so I'm glad that this seems like I made the right choice. And I've heard, a synopsis of the show being like, Saitama goes to Hogwarts, basically describing it in one sentence. I was like, I need to watch this. This just sounds amazing to me. And then at number 10, we have Insomniacs After School, which also I'm very excited. Bodes super well. This has been one of my most anticipated anime of the season, and I'm very excited for that. Now, I'm going to add in, from now on, we're going to start adding in another anime audience ranking, because the thing is, there are other sources, and so people use other things. So I found this other thing, and we've actually been using them as a news source the entire time we've been doing the Otaku Experience, but I realized that they actually do this thing where they also do audience voting every week. And so this is their second week, technically. They started a week earlier than the Anime Trending did, and so this was their second week episode ranking, audience ranking. So at number 1, we have Oshi no Ko. So there you go, Oshi no Ko fans. There. Are you satisfied? No, you're not. I know you're not. And they got 11.81% of the votes. Then at number 2, we had Demon Slayer Swordsmith Village Arc, which got 6.15% of the votes. And then this is like just the vote of what is the best episode, right? Then at number 3, we had Love Yamada at level 999, which dropped one spot as Oshi no Ko and Demon Slayer pushed it down to number 3, which got 5.07% of the votes. There's a lot of numbers here, guys, that I'm looking at. Okay, at number 5, we had Hell's Paradise, which dropped
or at number 4, sorry, we had Tengoku Daimakyo dropping 3 spots from number 1, thanks to Oshinoko and Demon Slayer pushing it down, and that got 4.96% of the votes. At number 5, we had Hell's Paradise dropping 2 spots from rank 3 down to rank 5, which got 4.65% of the votes. We have a new entry at number 6, which is Dr. Stone New World, which actually was not on the other list at all, which is very exciting to see. I'm excited that, once again, looks like Dr. Stone is doing very well, and I'm excited to start that. And that got 4.32% of the vote. At number 7, we had Konosuba, which dropped down 4 spots, or down 3 spots from rank number 4, and got 4.03% of the vote. We got at number 8, Mashle Magic and Muscles, which is a new entry, and that got 4.01% of the vote. At number 9, which is a show that was not on the Annie Trends ranking, is I Got a Cheat Skill in Another World and became unrivaled in the real world too, which dropped 4 spots from rank 5 to number 9, and that got 3.93% of the vote. And then at number 10, which is another anime that was not on the anime trending, so that's why we're doing this, because it's interesting to see this change, is a show that I've also seen. It was a really cute episode. I've heard this was an anime original episode, probably my least favorite episode of the show so far, but still, I mean, for Tonikawa standards, that's still a really cute episode. And that's a new entry, which is Tonikawa Season 2, and that got 3.48% of the vote. And guys, that is those are your anime rankings for this week. It looks like, in general, the best anime that are airing right now. And it's funny because you look on the anime corner list and they don't have Gundam on here, but then you look at the Annie Trends and they don't have things like Tonikawa or a Cheat Skill or Dr. Stone. So it's very interesting to see the contrast in these. And I think that taking a look at both of these will ultimately help us be able to look and more accurately kind of get our finger on the pulse of the anime community. But it looks like, generally speaking, the best anime of the season so far is either Hell's Paradise or Oshinoko, which seems to be pretty solid. Also, something that's at number 2 on Annie Trends, and then at number 3 on Anime Corner is Loving Yamada level 999. That baffles me. And so if you average those out, it's like 2.5. Dude, that's crazy to me. And that just makes me super excited to want to check that out as well. And guys, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Otaku Experience, as well as the end of the first core. If you know what you're talking about with anime, anime airs in cores. A core is usually 12 episodes long, and so this being episode 12 is the end of the first core. I will see you guys next week as we begin the second core with episode 13 of the Otaku Experience. If you'd like to keep up with me, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Kingtanic. You can follow me on Twitter at Kingtanic Israel, or you can follow me on Instagram at Kingtanic. And also make sure to come back to the Bur Network. We have great shows like Robservations, Ladies of the PGS, K-Pasa PGS, Midnight Musings, the brand new video game show Architects of Imagination. That was a great first episode. And of course, the Otaku Experience, the show you're watching right now. With all that being said, guys, I will see you next week.